Sophia woke up slowly, surrounded by a distant whisper that she couldn't decipher. She opened her eyes, confused and disoriented. Where was she? She tried to move her head, but a sharp pain stopped her immediately. She looked around cautiously and realized that she was in a hospital room. She heard the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor beside her and instinctively put her hand to her head. It was wrapped in bandages. Her heart began to beat faster as she tried to remember what had happened, but all she could think of was the image of a green light and her crossing the street. After that, nothing. Before continuing, subscribe to our channel and activate the bell. The pain throbbed harder and harder, but was interrupted by the arrival of a nurse. "Ah, you're finally awake," the nurse said with a gentle smile. "How do you feel?" Sophia opened her mouth to respond, but the words escaped her. "What happened to me?" she managed to whisper after a few seconds. "You had a bad accident. You were hit by a car while crossing the street at the crosswalk. Don't you remember anything?" Sophia shook her head slightly. The nurse leaned over to administer a painkiller. "Don't worry if you can't remember. It's normal after such a big trauma. Rest. Everything will come back in due time." Sophia tried to relax, but her thoughts were confused and fragmented. Every time she tried to remember the incident, her headache increased. She felt stuck in limbo. The room was quiet, interrupted only by the sounds coming from the hallway. The sound of dishes brought her back to reality. It was mealtime. A patient next to her struggled to get her tray. Sophia watched her, motionless, as the nurse handed out the meals. "You won't be able to eat today," a health worker told her as she approached her bed. "Okay, just a few drops of water maybe," Sophia replied in a tired voice. The worker helped her up slightly and handed her a glass. After taking a small sip, Sophia fell back onto the bed. Exhaustion overwhelmed her, but it was more than just physical weakness. She felt a growing anguish inside her, a feeling of emptiness that she couldn't explain. Soon after, one of the other patients asked her, "What's your name?" "Sophia," she said softly, too tired to speak out loud. "I'm Elena, and that's Lucia," the woman said, pointing to another patient farther away. "We've had surgeries too." Sophia nodded, but her mind was wandering elsewhere. She felt as if something dark was lurking. Suddenly, a strange grayish mist appeared in the room. It slowly condensed before Sophia's eyes, vaguely taking on a human shape. It was like a semi-transparent shadow, slowly floating towards her. A shiver ran down her spine. She closed her eyes, hoping it was just a hallucination. When she opened them again, the haze had cleared, and in its place was a doctor approaching her bed. "How are you feeling?" he asked, checking her pupils with a small flashlight. "You had a head injury, but the surgery went well. Now you need a lot of rest." Sophia looked at him with confused eyes. "I can't remember anything," she muttered. "It's normal," the doctor replied calmly. "The memories may return, but don't force yourself. Let the body heal." After the doctor left, Sophia lay there, staring at the ceiling. But over the next few days, strange things began to happen. Whenever someone approached her, she could sense their thoughts. At first, she thought it was just a feeling, but over time she realized it wasn't an illusion. She could literally read the minds of the people around her. One morning, 2 policemen showed up in the room. "We're here to discuss the incident," one of them said. Sophia tried to remember more, but all she could say was, "I was crossing on a green light, and then nothing." The cops nodded, taking notes. "The car that hit you was stolen. We're still looking for who was driving it." After they left, Sophia leaned back against the pillows, exhausted. Her head continued to throb, and the visions only got worse. The gray haze returned frequently, transforming into human figures floating around her. Their voices were like whispers in the air, unintelligible but persistent. Days passed, and little by little her body began to recover. One evening, as the sun was setting, Sophia had a particularly intense vision. She clearly saw a man falling to the floor, unconscious. In a panic, she got up from her bed and ran out of the room, despite the pain in her head. She reached the door of her neighbor in the bed, an elderly lady she had not seen for days. She knocked frantically, but no one answered. "Mrs. Maria, are you okay?" Sophia shouted. No answer. Driven by a sense of urgency, she called a nurse. When they opened the door, they found Mrs. Maria on the floor, unconscious. They immediately rescued her and took her away in serious condition. Sophia was shocked, but at the same time relieved. She had saved a life with that strange ability. But she knew she couldn't continue to live like this, tormented by the visions and thoughts of others. One night, while she was trying to sleep, she saw the mist appear again, but this time there was no fear. It had almost become a part of her daily life. As the days passed, her family began to notice the changes. "Mom, you really should talk to someone about all this," her son Marco said, concerned. Sophia nodded, but she wasn't sure who could really help her. The visions weren't something that could be easily explained. Sophia made a full recovery and was released from the hospital. One day, while walking down the street, Sophia saw a young woman approaching a bus stop. Suddenly, a vision appeared before her eyes. The bus would overturn shortly after. She ran to the woman and stopped her. "Don't get on that bus," she told her urgently. The woman looked at her suspiciously and continued on her way, ignoring the warning. The next day, Sophia saw a news report of an accident. The same bus had overturned, just like in her vision. She felt helpless. She had done everything she could, but it was not enough. Time passed, and her abilities did not fade. Sophia continued to live between fear and the desire to help others. Over time, she began to understand that her gift could be a blessing if used with caution. But she also knew that she could never save everyone. Whenever someone approached her, she tried not to let their thoughts overwhelm her. She had learned to control her abilities, at least to some extent, and to focus only on what was truly important. Eventually, she accepted her new role in life, not as a psychic, but as a woman who had learned to see beyond the surface of things. Did you like this story? Leave a comment below. Thanks for watching the video till the end, and see you next story.